Thank you, everyone, for being here. Nancy, thank you for the grace, as always. I receive it. And I'm so glad my sister Noelle came back, and she's so special. And Nelson, her boyfriend. It's going to be a good night. Effie, I'm so happy you're back. So great to see you. We missed you. And to our newcomers, thank you for being here. We try to get through this quick. We got a lot to talk about, but it's going to be great. And then we'll give you a chance to share if you'd like. So you get to talk. I don't have to do all the talking. But Nancy mentioned grace, and it's so great if you study all the gods and all of creation and all the gods that are out there. We have a God that lets you come boldly before a throne of grace to obtain mercy in time of need and help. Boldly come. He doesn't make you go through certain barriers to get there. You just show up, and the grace is there, and the mercy is there, and it's so powerful. So tonight, my message, if you read the email, is entitled, Forgotten, Forsaken, and Feeling Separate. Notice I said feeling separate, not separate, because you're never separate from God. You may feel like you are, but you're not isolated. He's always there. He's always pouring out His love, His grace, and His mercy if you're open to receive it. You're never separate. When I'm thinking about forgotten, I'm thinking about how many of us as children were forgotten. I have a little 5-year-old buddy, Danny, who I used to take care of, and we went to his dance competition, and he comes out crying to me because I was distracted and I was trying to find the car, and he thought that I forgot him. And he comes running over and he said, Nathan, you forgot me. And I said, no, honey, I didn't. I love you. I didn't forget you. I would never forget you. But he felt forgotten. It was a feeling that he felt deep down. And every one of you have felt forgotten. Forsaken is abandonment. Completely abandoned. Rejected, alone. And feeling separate. That's an isolation. That's loneliness. It's feeling completely removed and not fitting into certain groups of people that make you think that you have to belong to them, okay? Now, Mephibosheth, if you heard the name of the story, Mephibosheth, what a weird name. That's his real name, Mephibosheth. And his name has a meaning like all names do, and I'm going to tell you his name meaning in a second. But let me give you a little backstory on Mephibosheth. And we're not going to get into it because it takes place in 1 Samuel. I'm not going to read the text because we have a short amount of time, but I'm going to go through this really quickly, so bear with me. So Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of King Saul, who was the first king of Israel. Okay? Now, King David came after Saul, and Saul was always jealous of King David. He was so jealous because, remember David, the little boy who beat Goliath with the slingshot? And David just was anointed as a boy, and Saul was always jealous of his youthfulness. Have you ever had people in your life that are just jealous of your youth? And he was just envious, and so he always wanted to kill David. Now, Jonathan is Saul's son, so this is the arch enemy of David, Saul, and this is Saul's son Jonathan, and Jonathan and David happen to be best friends. See, Saul would be in torment, and he'd have evil spirits speaking at him all night as the king. They'd come in, they'd mess with his dreams, and so he would have David, this little boy David, the harp player, come in and play songs for him. And so Jonathan, Saul's son, David's arch enemy, they became friends, Jonathan and David. Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son, a prince, destined to be prince. Hey, so this is what Mephibosheth's name means. This is interesting. His name means man of shame. Man of shame. Now, that's not how his name started. His original name was Meribel, contender with Baal. You see, Jonathan named his son a contender with Baal because he was destined to be a warrior and to fight all the false gods of the Philistine in the name of God Jehovah, and to be a defender of God and to get rid of the fake gods. So his name started out being contender with Baal, warrior against the false gods, and then it went back to being man of shame. He renamed himself. Now, why would Mephibosheth name himself that? Well, let me tell you why. Mephibosheth lived in a land called Lo-debar. Lo-debar, okay? This is the lowest place you could live. It actually means no pasture. There's no cows grazing in this land. And it means barren place. So not only is he a man of shame, but now he's living in a place with no pasture. And it's barren and it's desolate. Now, he chose to live there. Remember, he's the son of Jonathan, who Jonathan was heir to the throne. So, as he's living in this place, let me tell you how he got there. This is fascinating. Remember, Saul and David were arch enemies, okay? And what happens when David was about to be king over Saul? This is what happens. In any type of dynasty, back in those days, you would kill off all the offspring of the previous dynasty to protect your throne so that none of the other kids had a claim to your throne. So when Saul and Jonathan were killed, father and son kingdom, and David was about to take over, there was fear in the house of Saul that everybody was going to come and try to kill the offspring. So Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, was there, and his nurse was in a hurry at 5 years old and dropped Mephibosheth, and he was lame in both his feet, okay? But the reason that he had shame and guilt, he thought, as we all do as children when we receive wounds, he thought it was his fault. And so he lived in this place of isolation and destitution, not knowing who he was rightfully as heir. Now, Jonathan and David, okay, King Jonathan, Jonathan, who is Mephibosheth's father, and David, remember they were friends. King David, who's now king of Israel. Jonathan has died. Before Jonathan died, he made a covenant, which is a contractual binding agreement. He made a covenant with David, his best friend, and he said, you have to promise me that when you become king, you will bless and be kind to the house of Jonathan forever. So he said, I want you to show kindness to my family forever. Because he was afraid, because he knew what was going to happen. They were going to try to kill him. I mean, if we didn't live in a democracy in the United States and it was like, Game of Thrones kind of stuff, and you see all this going on, it'd be like Obama takes over and he has to kill all Bush's kids. I mean, that's what would happen to maintain his rule over the country. So that's where we're at. And so there was fear, and Jonathan's like, please promise me, make a covenant. Now, this is how they made covenants back then. Fascinating. Everything was a blood covenant, okay? So what they would do is he would prick a piece of his blood, he would take a prick of his blood, they pour it into a glass of wine, they mix it, and they drink it. And that was the sealing of the covenant. Some tribes, if you research with covenant making, they'll slit wrists and tie their wrists together and connect the blood, or they'll take the palms of their hands and push them together, okay? It's always two bloods coming together as a covenant that cannot be changed. It's a blood-binding contract. This is for real. So now David is bound to bless the house of Jonathan forever. And so Mephibosheth is living in this place. He doesn't know who he is. And David and Jonathan had this great, let's call it the original bromance going on, right? I've got a bromance with some of you guys in this room. It was like the original bromance. I mean, who else would you make a covenant of blood with, okay? It had to be your best friend. So this is these guys. And, it's interesting how Jonathan's dad was such an enemy of David, and yet Jonathan and David still remained friends, and that's how tight their bond was. So, King David is, he's in the palace, he's living the dream, he's the king of all Israel, he has, succeeded Saul, he's all-powerful, and he's walking around one day and he says, is there anyone still left in the house of Saul whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? Is there anyone left? Because he wanted to keep his contract. He wanted to show kindness to the house of Jonathan. And so there was a servant, and I'm not going to go through all this, but his servant's name was Ziba. Remember that name, Ziba. And Ziba goes, I know. There's this guy named Mephibosheth. Well, where is he? Bring him to me. I want to talk to him. So the King David goes to Lodibar, calls for Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth comes, crippled, both his feet. He can barely walk. He's walking on crutches, whatever they had. And the son of Jonathan, Mephibosheth, came to David. David said, Mephibosheth. He got so excited because he was going to keep his promise to his dead best friend and bless his son, Mephibosheth. At your service, he replied, Mephibosheth. King David said, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul. And that's David's enemy. And you will always eat at my table. This is David's covenant promise to Mephibosheth. He's keeping his word, even though Saul was his enemy. And he's saying, you get to eat at my table, and I'm going to give you all the land back. Mephibosheth bowed down and said, what is your servant? He's talking about himself. That you should notice a dead dog like me. What a sad image, a dead dog. But that's how Mephibosheth saw himself. If he would look in the mirror every day, he'd say, I'm just a dead dog. I'm nothing. I'm dog meat. I'm worthless. And so even when King David gives him this covenant promise, says you're going to take everything, he still thinks of himself as a dead dog. Why would you say that to the king? If someone gave you $1 million, you say, oh, I don't deserve that. No, you take the $1 million. You take the kingdom. But this is where his mindset is. So then the king told Ziba, you know, Ziba the servant that told about Mephibosheth? Ziba was the manager of the property of Saul, who's now dead. Now, Ziba had been plotting all along to keep the inheritance of Saul, Mephibosheth's grandfather. He wanted to keep it for himself. He was a servant. It was all his. And oh, great. Now David's keeping his covenant promise. He's taking all of my wealth back, okay? So Ziba's a little ticked off. So we keep going in the story, and all of a sudden, there's a war that breaks out, and now Absalom, who is King David's son, he's coming after his father David. This crazy stuff going on in this Game of Thrones kingdom, and he's coming to kill his father, and this is all this nonsense. So David flees from Jerusalem. He's tired of being in Jerusalem. And he goes, and Ziba comes out, the servant who wanted everything. And remember, Mephibosheth couldn't come join David because he was crippled. So Ziba comes out. And Ziba says this. He says, hey, I brought you these donkeys and all this food and this clothing. And he's like, well, where's Mephibosheth? Where did he go? Where's your master at? And he said, well, he stayed back in Jerusalem because he's trying to take over your kingdom. So Ziba lies to King David and says that Mephibosheth is staying back because he wanted the kingdom. Now, King David starts getting worried because already his son Absalom is trying to take his own kingdom from him. He thinks, oh my gosh, I just gave this guy everything. Now he's trying to steal it from me. And so then the king said to Ziba, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. And the servant Ziba goes, okay, great, give it to me. I want it. I get it back. And he thought he tricked him. Now, you've got an enemy. The enemy of your souls. He's the father of lies. And he does not want you to have the inheritance that is available to you through God the Father, through Jesus Christ. It's all yours if you receive it, if you believe and receive it. And he doesn't want you to have it. He's been plotting for a way to steal it, so he'll tell lies like this. And he got it. He obtained it. And so then David returns. Finally, everything's safe. Absalom dies, and he comes back to the kingdom, to his kingdom, and he goes, and of course Mephibosheth is there. Now, in the meantime, Mephibosheth had never done anything with his appearance, okay? He's been given all this wealth. He gets to sit at the king's table, and it says that he went down to meet King David. He hadn't taken care of his feet, trimmed his mustache, washed his clothes from the day he left, returned safely. He was just the same old Mephibosheth. And I'm telling you, folks, what happens is that your circumstances can change in life, and you can get the wealth and the power and everything that you want. But until it becomes an inner reality of how you value yourself and who God declares you to be through a covenant that is in place, you're always going to dress the part. You're always going to feel like a dead dog. You're always going to feel worthless because it hasn't become an inner reality yet. And some of you are sitting here with wounds of the past, wounds from your childhood. Just like Mephibosheth, 5 years old, his nurse dropped him. And the guilt and the shame that overcame his life, and he sat there in torment, not feeling like he was good enough and feeling that it was his fault that he was crippled. He was lame in his mind, he was lame in his heart, he was lame in his feet. Because he didn't know the truth about who he was. If he only knew that he was destined to be a prince. He couldn't get it through his head because he only saw what was in front of him. Nothing, he never did any research. He never understood why he was dropped. He never looked into it, investigated, got the forgiveness, got the healing. And so he lived in this place of shame, like we all do. And a lot of times as children, we deal with awful things like sexual molestation. We deal with abandonment issues from divorced parents and alcoholism, all these kind of things, and drug addiction. And we sit there and we're just like Mephibosheth, where we have all this guilt and we all think that it was self-inflicted, like it was all our fault. But really, someone else initiated the pain. It was someone else's fault that he was the way that he was. And he couldn't understand that. It happens a lot of time with children that are molested as young kids. You hear it all the time. Oh, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. No, the adult knew better. Nobody was there to protect Mephibosheth. And so when he went back, David came back to meet him. David was finally safe again. He said, David said, why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? King David said, he said, my lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said I will have my donkey saddled and ride on it. Remember, Ziba gave the donkeys away so that I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me. And he has slandered your servant to my lord And my grandfather's descendant Saul deserved nothing. So now he's like, oh, I got tricked by the devil. The devil tricked me. He lied to you about me. And so now, here goes that dead dog again. I deserve nothing. Not a thing. Nothing. You go ahead. You take whatever, do whatever you wish with me. All my grandfather's descendants are do nothing but death for my Lord, your king. But you gave your servant a place among, he's talking about himself, those to eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? What right did I have? That is a question that we ask ourselves all the time. What right do I have to boldly go before the throne of grace and not use a legalistic system of laws and rules to obtain righteousness before God in favor of God? What right do I have to say that God is pleased with me, not based on the things that I do to try to please Him, but He's based on my faith in Him? What right do I have? I saw this movie with Marlon Brando. It's called On the Waterfront. And remember, it's the one where he says, I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am. And all the guys called me a bum. And they all were against him because he was trying to do the right thing. And then he looks at the lady and he says, you know what? All my life they call me a bum. I'm going down to press my rights on that dock. I'm going to press my rights. Because I don't want to be called a bum no more. I don't want to be called a dead dog no more. I don't want to be worthless no more. Those are my rights. I have a right to work on that dog. I have a right to earn money. Just like you have a right to access everything in the kingdom of God that's available to you through your covenant head, Jesus Christ. Now remember, we talked about the shedding of blood is the bonding agreement of covenants. Now Jesus Christ, God's own Son, was forsaken on the cross. Remember when He looked up to heaven and He said, my God, my Father, why have you forsaken me? He didn't forsake us as a people. He forsook His own Son that you should never be forsaken again. Who would do that to their kid on behalf of all of us? Jesus was forsaken. But when Jesus cut covenant with God on our behalf, what that means is that you don't have to do anything to keep your end of the agreement. None of your blood has to be shed. Jesus shed the blood as the covenant head. And what He did with that blood, because remember, God's Spirit, so He can't, intermix the blood. Jesus ascended into heaven and He sprinkled the blood on the mercy seat as a once and for all time in covenant atonement, contractual obligation that says to the Father, everything that you've done, past, present, future, wrong or right, good or evil, if you receive Jesus Christ and you believe in Him and you have faith in Him, then every drop of blood that He shed as your atonement is yours once and for all time. He never has to shed another drop of blood because of the covenant that's in place. You're in covenant with God because of Jesus Christ, not because of your own merits and what you do. And so Mephibosheth was ignorant of his covenant rights. He didn't know what was available to him. So he kept looking at himself based on the world value system. Well, look at you. You're supposed to be a prince. You can't even get your feet together. You can't even walk. You don't even know who you are. And people will drill things into you and tell you what you aren't instead of telling you who you are and what you have available to you. And Mephibosheth was ignorant, and he says, what right do I have? Take it all from me. What a sad state of being. The king said to him, I order you and Ziba to divide the land. Now, King David, in that moment, broke his covenant with Jonathan because he wasn't supposed to divide the land with Ziba. He was supposed to protect the house of Jonathan forever and show kindness to him. King David broke his covenant with Jonathan in an instant. And he said, divide the land. And then Mephibosheth said something really ignorant again. He said, let him take everything. Now that my lord the king has returned home safely, just give it all to Ziba. Give it all to my enemy. I don't even care anymore. He can have everything. And Mephibosheth went back to being a dead dog. Now what should Mephibosheth have said to King David when King David was ready to divide his inheritance and all of his wealth and everything that was his under the covenant with Jonathan? What should he have said? He should have said, Jonathan! Jonathan, 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 Jonathan. He should have screamed Jonathan's name and said, remember your covenant with my daddy, Jonathan. He should have yelled it out and pressed his rights. And what happens to us with the enemy of your soul, the father of lies, the devil, and he's real, folks. I'm telling you, he's real. And his job is to thrust through in your life and to just pierce you and to steal everything from you because he's jealous, just like King Saul was jealous of David. He's jealous of everything you have from the Father through Jesus Christ because he doesn't get to receive all that. Why wouldn't he be jealous? We get to live a good life of faith, promise, freedom from death, all these things. And Mephibosheth should have said, Jonathan, just like when us, and if you're new to this whole faith thing and you don't understand what I'm talking about, stay with me. We should say the same thing when the enemy wakes up every day and tries to rob us and tries to steal us and say, you don't deserve that nice house. You don't deserve that car. You don't deserve that good boyfriend. You don't deserve that good girlfriend. None of that is for you. Look at what you did last week. Look where you were this weekend. Look what you got yourself into. You're worthless. You're nobody. Don't you even think about going to that throne of grace. The Father would never hear any of your requests ever again. And people start praying like worthless human beings. I've been in prayer meetings before where people just go, oh God, I'm so unworthy. Please, just please give me something. You need to know your worthiness based on a covenant that was in place before you were ever born and claim your rights. What insanity for Mephibosheth to throw it all away and just give it to his enemy. And you're giving all your goods to your enemy. And you're just handing them over. I'm sorry, but if I got an enemy, I'm going to fight to make sure that that enemy doesn't get his stinking, filthy hand on anything that's mine because I want it all. And what do you want? What is the inheritance under the new covenant? What are some of the things? Let me just read them to you. Health, prosperity, peace of heart, wealth of mind, freedom from the fear of death. These are all part of the new covenant inheritance through Jesus Christ. That's it, folks. And if you're going to live in a life of guilt and shame when you're destined to be the prince, and I'd like to put that into a relatable setting for you because you're destined to be a princess. You're destined to be king. You're like, well, how can you have that many kings? Well, let me tell you something about God. The prophet Isaiah said that he, if you believe in him, will write your name on the palm of his hand. Those are some pretty big hands. You've heard the song, he's got the whole world in his hands. If he's got to write the names of everyone that believes in him on his hands, he's got to have big hands. So he's got really Goliath-sized hands. And he's waiting to write your name on his hands. So anytime you start feeling like a low-down, insecure, worthless piece of nothing because you don't make that much money, you haven't had kids yet, you're not where you're supposed to be in life because of what age you're at, and the world starts screaming at you, you should do something. Yes. And God's just saying, stop. Read my hand. Whose name is on there? That's your name. That's your inheritance. And the next time the enemy tries to steal everything from you, you should stand up and say, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Like Mephibosheth should have said, Jonathan, Jonathan, Jonathan. You should say, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And get passionate about your covenant rights. Before Mephibosheth was even born, the covenant was in place. But what happened to him as a 5-year-old kid is what happened to all of us. We get dropped. We get thrown on the floor. The nurse was trying to protect him, but she couldn't protect him from the wound. Some of your parents tried the best that they could to protect you, but they couldn't. And they dropped you. And you're crippled in your feet. And it's tough, I know. But it's tough to live a life where you feel like you've been dropped. But that's not the end of it. You don't have to live in a place called shame in Lodi Bar. You don't have to change your name to something else so that you can justify why you're so worthless. You can have all the worth, all the value, all the inheritance that you could possibly want by faith. And there's an all-out war against faith. There's many people who believe in a lot of things, but nobody's out there saying, Jesus! That's mine. I want it back. The enemy took that from me. The enemy took that relationship from me. She's mine. I prayed for her. She's mine. You told me about her. The dreams that I had about the education that I wanted, it's mine. The enemy took it from me. All that money that I had coming away, he stole it. I want it back. And remind God of his covenant. Because let me tell you something about the contractual obligation between God and man. He has to, by promise and contractual obligation through the blood of Jesus Christ, he has to award you everything that's yours by inheritance, by you crying out to him and reminding him. And if he doesn't, he denies his own son and therefore denies his own existence. And everything that's ever been written and spoken about Jesus Christ or the God the Father is diminished to nothing, and we're all just free floaters. That's how important the covenant is. His circumstances, your circumstances are always going to shift. Billy was talking about last week. One day it was doing great. The next day got a ticket. He woke up and the car was parked. If you judge your life but how your day goes, day to day, oh, I was up here yesterday and then I was down here, then this happened, you'll have a schizophrenic mind. And you'll drive yourself insane trying to figure out the meaning of life. Instead of accepting the inner reality of who you are based on who God says you are. This man Gideon, who fought all these wars, you've heard about Gideon. There's a Gideon Bible in every hotel you go into. Gideon was a powerful, strong, won wars. And you know what happened to Gideon when God said that you're going to be a mighty warrior and you're going to conquer all these things? He was in hiding because he was afraid. He said, God, I'm so afraid. And he said, didn't you just hear what I just told you were going to be? And the power that's invested in you? So God the Father isn't looking for just, wow, strong people. I want strong men and women. He's looking for weak, feeble, fear people that just are going to believe what he says and then be everything that he said to be. Otherwise, you wind up like Mephibosheth, and you'll throw it all away and you'll give it all away. It's like my friend John and Bev, they travel over the country. And they have Admiral VIP status in their, flight status. And they were sitting out in this crowded airport one day for like an hour, and they're like, what are we doing out here? We're in the Admiral Club. We could be in VIP eating like kings. Let's go back there. They forgot their benefits with the airline. It's so easy to forget your benefits when you think that every little point system you put in your life is supposed to create rewards. God was never meant to be had as a reward for something you do to earn him. He was always supposed to be received as a father, and received as a son, and received as an inheritance, like Mephibosheth, so that you can just keep receiving all the goods, and then out of what you receive is what you're going to give back. And if you got nothing to receive, you ain't got nothing to give. And you're just going to keep spitting out dry heaves. And God just wants you to give everything. So you're not forgotten. You're never abandoned or forsaken. And your feeling of separation was just because you didn't know what was available to you. And if you're hungry to know what's available to you, I'm happy to share it with you. It's all in the scriptures. It's all in the text. Everything that's available to Jesus is available to you if you just believe. And that's all I have to say.
I'm Russell. I'm an alcoholic.
All right, Russ.
Dennis, thank you. Yeah, fellowship is definitely one part of the aspect. The connection. Definitely. I was looking for connection the whole life. I still go to meetings to hear the message through people. I believe God speaks through people. Fellowship and unconditional love, definitely, that's filled me up a lot. The disease also hides in isolation. For me, the type of alcoholic or addict that I am, untreated, I can be surrounded by a bunch of people and feel alone.
Yeah.
But that lives inside me. That is my disease. I have to know that. Whenever I am disturbed, no matter the cause, the problem is with me, not the thing.
Yeah.
I was disturbed at dinner when on the outside my food was paid for. I was with my two closest friends. A competitor company was whatever the hell they were doing, what my mind was interpreting they were doing. And I was driving home, and I wanted to be here. You know, I didn't want to hear about profit and loss and margins and big money and this and that. I don't care. It's the truth. Now maybe then I don't care because it's easy for me to say because I've become successful. But you know what? I wanted to be here. I wanted to connect. I wanted to be of service. I wanted to slow down. And you know, I'm sitting there and I'm just like, okay, all right, and I'm riding it through, and I know I preach against that and talk against that, but it's like there's this weird surrender that's happened to me that I know it doesn't matter what will happen on the outside. I have to go for that peace and serenity on it. It's an inside job. And that can be a curse and a gift. The curse can be you can sit down with a company and dollar signs can be talked about in your mind can go, even with that, it won't matter because it's an inside job. I know what it's like to be on a private beach in Malibu and looking at my phone. It doesn't matter. I have to go for the peace inside. Today. I have a daily reprieve from my alcoholism, ego self, which finds fault with anything, which is it makes me separate from you. It tells me I'm in control of my life, and then when I get control of what I think I want something else. It makes me in the destination business, which sounds like this. Once I get there, I'll be happy, all that nonsense. But when I treat it with a surrender of, I am the wrong power of my life. God, I need your help right now. And then there's these steps that I take which, with application, connect me more to some type of power. It doesn't say I came to believe in a power. It says I came to believe that a power. So I have to believe that this power that I believe in, God or Jesus, will restore me to sanity. And my insanity is not I'm in a straitjacket. My insanity is that I'm at a nice dinner with my closest friends going insane. That's insanity. How many times has anyone left the room tonight while we're sitting here and thought about something else? I have. I can't afford to do that. I can't afford to entertain. I'm talking for me. This is for me. I don't know about your life. With 13 years sober, with a lot of stuff, with a lot of stuff in bank accounts, stuff and outside, I, as Russell, can't afford to entertain negative thoughts. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you can. I can't do it. Can't do it. What does entertain feel like? A negative thought comes in. I'm powerless over that. But then it comes in. I got to be aware of it, recognize it. Am I going to jump on it? Am I going to think about it? Am I going to entertain it? Am I going to pour gas on it? Am I going to feed it? I can't afford to do that. I can't do it. Kill me. It'll kill me. I've lost that luxury. I've lost the luxury to follow a negative thought. One. That's what I'm up against. That's scary. So what can I do to prevent that? Well, I got to first know what I'm up against. For me, I have to know what I'm up against. So upon awakening, if I don't have some spiritual connection, then upon awakening, I'm usually fault finding. I'm usually feeling like, what the fuck? Why should I get up? I'm usually feeling like, what's the point? I've done this before. And in that moment, I can either be a taker for the day or be a giver. That's really what it comes down to. Am I going to get up and give? How do I give? What do you mean give? Give money? What do you mean? Just like give? No. I can give my attention. I can give love. I can smile at people. I can let others cut in front of me and not honk the horn and not drive other people's cars. I can try to see the good in people. I can give opportunities. I can give compliments. And I'm trying. And lately I feel like I don't have much to give because I got a lot on my shoulders. Because I'm trying to do a lot. And I was feeling that today. So anyway, what was my application when I was driving home? Because it's got to be about application. It doesn't matter. I could recite this stuff. I could know it. I could say all the funniest lines. I could recite the book back and forth. I could recite scripture. But I got to do this. I take these steps. It says I take these steps, right? I have to take them. I didn't just sit there and look at a drink and be like, that drink, that just looks great, and just know it and analyze it and know a color. I took that drink. I got to take these steps for some type of spiritual connection. I got to live it. So I'm driving home and I'm uncomfortable and I got to pee and I'm in a rush. And
I'm feeling inadequate, how I should have done this at the meeting, I should have done that, I should have said this, or I should have said this, and I'm just like, yo, I'm an alcoholism, ego and self right there. And that's the gift, God. My mind is back to its old tricks again. That's my prayer. Protect me from my own thoughts. Protect me from my own thoughts right now. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to drive? What do you want to do? You want me to just drive like this? And then I go to the surrender, back to step one. All right, I give up. I'm going to stop fighting. I'm powerless over how I feel right now. You want me to feel irritated? I'm going to be irritated. Quit fighting. That's what I was looking for. That's all I've been looking for my whole life, is this. And the illusion is, I think if I get enough money, I think if I get to the right beach, I think if I get the right girl, I think if I get that, I'll get this. But I can find that right now by surrendering the future and the past. Just being like, right now is the perfect moment. I'm around people I love. I don't have to know what's going to happen in the next moment. I don't have to get ready for the next 2 minutes. If I'm turning my life over and I'm continuously trying to say, God, be with me right now in this day, in this moment, right now. Show me how you want me to think. Show me how you want me to record. Show me how you want me to make these beats. This guy's killing me. Show me how you want me to listen to him. It has to be a relationship. This isn't a one-time thing in the morning. I pray and I'm good. You can do that. I can't. Love that. Love Street. Thank you.